Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Today we're going to talk about the packing list that you should try and use for preparation for Hajj and Umrah. Now, this list isn't exhaustive and it isn't meant to be exhaustive. And one more thing to call out is that it isn't always going to be Ihram friendly items in the list, right? So this list will include items that you'll need throughout the journey. So be careful about what products can you use during Ihram and what are the items that you cannot. So as we go through the list, we'll talk about the different products. We'll try to provide a printable checklist in the description below, as well as link to some products that you might be able to buy online. So what we try to do for this is try to organize the items that you might need or consider packing based on different categories. First is sabr and taqwa. Again, this isn't quite literally something you would pack, but we'll talk about this a little bit as well. Second is documents, currencies, and books. Third is category is clothing, ihram, accessories. Fourth is luggage and bags. Weather production items, it is pretty hot, so you want to be prepared for the weather. Maps and location sharing items, medicine and snacks, personal care items, and some miscellaneous products. So let's talk about sabr and taqwa. So you do read a lot of it. You will need a lot of patience, right? You want to be patient. Don't spoil the journey of a lifetime. This might be the only chance you get to go. And one critical thing that somebody told me was only the first Hajj is the Fard Hajj. So you can do more Hajj later on, but that wouldn't be necessarily the Fard obligated aspect of it. So to try to make sure that your Hajj isn't spoiled because of a little moment where you lose your emotions. So the first Hajj is very critical, right? We want to make sure that you don't mess it up. You don't do things that you will regret later. Don't get into arguments. The weather is hot. There are inconveniences. There are people who might seem unreasonable. If you do encounter certain people like that, you want to avoid getting into arguments, walk away, try to drink water, try to sit down if you're standing. If you're sitting down already, lay down. Just try to change your situation that you are in, and try not to be in that place if possible. So one thing to note is travel does mean inconveniences, right? So I remember a story about Umar radiallahu anhu, and he was asked, somebody told something good about another person, and he asked him that, have you traveled with him? And he said, I have not traveled with him. And he said, well, then you don't know him. So travel does bring out our personality, right? Sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's inconvenient, right? It's always easy to be considerate when everything is fine and everything is okay. It becomes harder and harder to keep up with the good qualities when you are in a situation that's out of your comfort zone. And you want to handle any challenges with patience. You don't want to get yourself in the situation which will be detrimental to your emotional state, and you don't want to. And let's say you do encounter situations where, let's say, for example, you should have received a certain service, or you were not treated the way you would ideally like to be treated. Again, these things you can address later potentially. Try not to discuss those during Hajj or during Ihram times. So try and stay away and handle any challenges with patience. One other thing that you want to be careful is Hajj is not just a to-do list. A lot of times there's a lot of different actions to be done to make sure that we are staying in line with what are the requirements for Hajj. But then it's not a to-do list. So you want to remember the spirituality of Hajj. And that's why it's recommended want to read books that talk and lectures and listen to lectures that build the spirit of Hajj. Like, why am I doing this? Right? Why am I doing the Saeed? Why am I doing Tawaf? Why am I going to Arafah? Right? Figuring out and just not making it a to-do list, a checklist, so that we can actually treat it like what it is, and it is a worship, and do it with the best way we can. Second category is documents and books. So one, you want to make sure that you have your passport. Make sure to carry that with you. Uh, make a copy of your visa, tickets, airline information, things like that. Uh, make sure to also keep your vaccination records. You could be asked for those during immigration. Try to keep a couple of different copies, and especially in different luggages of important documents, so that you don't misplace them. Make sure that you have it handy, the hotel that you are going to be at, the address of the hotel, and even the agent or the operator that you have booked the package with, their contact information. Sometimes you might you might not have charge on your phones, and that's when you having a physical record of those things will be handy. Do carry some photographs, although not quite necessary, but still a good thing to do, especially if all members of your family have those with you, especially like passport size photographs. Do keep some Hajj and Umrah procedure books. Now you will have a group, and typically you do have guides that go with you, but do know that it is probably not always possible for everyone to go together in all the different actions that we're supposed to do. So invariably you get separated. Invariably you want to do things at different times, and then knowing it yourself is very useful. You are in a different city, in a different country. There are a lot of things to do. So the more familiarity you have with the procedure is better, but then it's a good point to have a small book with you so you can refer to them again where you are confused or you're not quite sure what to do next. Also keep some dua books with you. Now, there isn't always in all actions a sunnah dua, but there are some general recommended duas that a lot of books cover. So try to keep those books with you. I think make a list of duas that you would want to do, right? Especially during tawaf and during times of Hajj and during time of Arafah. Have that dua list of what would you like to ask from Allah, right? This is a time where dua is accepted. So you want to basically ask for everything that you would like to have, right? Everything jaiz, everything that you would want to have for yourself in akhirah, and anything that is, halal things that you would like to have for yourself in dunya as well. Do keep credit cards with you. Ideally, you want to keep credit cards that are going to allow international transactions, and preferably those that don't have foreign transaction fees. You might want to also call to your credit card company and let them know you're traveling internationally. That way they don't block your transaction thinking it's a fraud. Do carry some cash as well. You want to keep your local currency. For example, if you're from the United States, you want to keep the currency in dollars. You don't need to convert all of your cash. There are a lot of conversion facilities and cash currency centers in and around haram areas and around the city. So it's fairly easy to convert to Saudi riyals as you need. But do keep small amounts of Saudi riyal. Sometimes you have some incidental charges, or you need something immediately. And if you plan to convert it in Jeddah on arrival, sometimes there's a long queue before you at the airport. So you want to have some amount of it with you just in case you need it. But again, don't need to do a lot. You can either convert it at your local bank, or you could do it at the airport. But do be aware that if you do it at the airport, there are some fees to be aware of. They do have some large fees sometimes. So do a small amount just for small incidentals. Otherwise, you can convert the rest of your cash as and when you need on a need-to-need basis. Next is, let's talk about clothing and accessories. So you do want to keep 2 ihram clothes, right? Now in ihram, there are two kinds of ihrams. There's a regular cotton cloth ihram, and there's a towel ihram. Different people prefer different items. The cotton ones are lighter, usually a lot easier to manage. The towel ones are heavier. It also becomes more heavy during when you're sweating and due to the weather. So, but on the other side, the cotton ones, you could potentially have very thin ones that could reveal your body. So you want to keep a balance, right? So you want to have sufficiently thick ihram And again, depending on your choice, do a cotton or a towel ihram. Do you want to keep normal clothes as well with you? Try to keep enough that would last you for the trip without having to wash. If possible, you might not be able to reuse clothes on a day-to-day basis because it is very hot. You would sweat a lot, so it's really hard to keep up. Now, there are a lot of local shops where you can buy clothes in the local market. So you could potentially pack few and then buy if necessary, or you could also plan to wash it yourself or get it washed. There are definitely a lot of options to do that as well. For the women, you want to make sure that you carry sanitary pads as needed, carry hijabs, abayas appropriate to the weather. And again, for the men, you want to make sure you do carry an ihram belt or a pouch. Again, this might not necessarily be something you tie your ihram with, but this is good to have to store, let's say, your phone, any hotel cards and things like that that you want to keep safe with you while you're in ihram. Do invest in some good quality flip-flops. There are some really good ones that you can buy. We'll try to link some in the description as well. You're going to walk a lot. So if they are not quite well suited for really long walks, you could potentially have challenges with feet hurting you. But then also you want to keep them safe. It is good. It is fairly easy to lose them, right? So you want to keep safe it with you, either when you want to keep it with your in your bags or make it put it in a place where it'll be safe. For post ihram times, do recommend having some comfortable walking shoes. Again, this is not necessary. If you have some decent flip flops, you could just wear those during the whole trip as well. You want to have some safety pins and for ihram. A lot of people are not used to wearing the ihram and end up exposing their bodies. Now, again, you want to make sure that those pins are not actually holding your ihram. So yeah, you want to be aware of the fiqh of the pins and consult a scholar. But again, a lot of people, what they like to do is pin them up, especially when you are not actively in ihram, but just in ihram clothes, just to keep them put on your body safely. Next is try to have a travel bray mat. Again, not necessary. You usually have, you're going to be playing inside the Haramain or you're going to be in Mina, but a good to have just in case you need them while you are in traveling. It could potentially help you. Actually, it will help you at airports potentially when you need to pray Salah. So you have to carry them. There are some door hooks that a lot of people are also recommending. A lot of these restrooms and toilets in Saudi wouldn't have a way to hang it, especially when you are in Mina, in also in Arafah. So having your own door hooks will help you hang the ihram and try to keep them clean while you're trying to use the facilities. Next is luggage and bags. Try to travel light, not have too much luggage. The more luggage you have with you, the harder the travel can be. Try to keep it to the bare minimum. If you have a checked luggage, which you probably will, check with your airline on baggage allowance. You don't necessarily need to carry the max, right? You want to minimize it, but again, check how much luggage and bags are allowed by your airline. If you have a carry-on bag, be careful because especially if you're going to use a train in Saudi Arabia, they do have some limitations. Then their baggage policies are a little bit more stricter. They only allow you one bag if you have more than a personal item. So if you have, let's say, a carry-on that's considered larger, then they might ask you to check one of your bags. It's basically what would be like a shipping of the bag, and that those bags can then reach later. So you want to try and avoid being in the situation. So if you do plan to go to Medina, for example, and in a train, and you are planning to come back to Jeddah or to Makkah, try to see if there are some alternate arrangements you can make and not have to travel with all your luggage. When I went to myself last year, I was in Makkah and then I was supposed to go to Medina and then come back to Makkah. So what I ended up doing was just leaving my extra luggage with the hotel, and they were gracious enough to keep it safe because I was going to check back in a couple of days in the same hotel. So that worked out for me. You might need a backpack. Again, this is something based on you would either have a checked luggage and a backpack, or a carry-on and a checked luggage, depending on what your preferences are. But a backpack might be convenient to take to Mina as well. Keep your personal items as well in it. You'd want to keep a string bag for shoes. Again, this is especially for inside haram. If you try to take larger bags in, security might stop you. You might get checked. Sometimes they might not let you take in. So you want to have a small string bag that you can keep for your shoes or your flip flops and keep them safe while you go inside. Sleeping bag again might not be needed depending on which group you're going with. Sometimes, a lot of times, the tour operators provide you bags that you could use in Muzdalifah, especially these are especially needed for those times. During Mina tents, they usually have a good, decent place. In Arafah, you don't necessarily need it, but again, Muzdalifah is probably a potential place where you might need a sleeping bag. And again, depending on your tour operator, you might be able to get one from them too. So you might consider buying it there if you're there, and you might even skip it. People just use a sheet if needed as well. Again, optional items, but a pillow cover or a bed sheet or an air pillow, these are primarily something that you would need in Muzdalifah if that's something to consider carrying. You want to try have some pouches for Pebbles. Again, it could be Ziploc bags or whatever, but just basically something that you can keep your Pebbles safe so that you can use it for Jamarat later on. Next is the weather protection is going to be fairly hot, so you want to have decent sunglasses, preferably UV protection sunglasses. You want to keep with you umbrella. Again, you get some UV umbrellas. There are some smaller ones that you can, compact ones that you can buy. So consider looking at that as well. Again, during sunglasses, depending on the fiqh that you follow, I do consider the scholars and to see if that's something you can wear during ihram. Hat, again, these are things you could potentially use when you're not in ihram. Water spray bottle, this could be useful. A lot of people carry them just in case you need to freshen up your wudu or you're in a spot where you don't have access to water. So that's something to consider carrying with you and have some water in there. That way you can do wudu if in case of emergencies. Inshallah, we'll try to make some videos on the tahara aspects of things as well. What are the minimum things that you need to do wudu with? And inshallah, we'll try to make those too. Again, portable fan, optional thing. Some people like to carry rechargeable ones that you could use to try to combat the weather. But mostly if you're traveling from Nusuk countries, a lot of those tents are AC tents, so you might not necessarily need them. Let's talk about maps and location sharing. You'd want to try and have a smartphone, something that you can store or share your location with, especially when you are going to be away from your family members, and you want to keep track and try to get connected. If you don't have a smartphone for each member, you might want to define a location where you'll meet in case you get lost or in case you're not able to connect. Try to make sure that you either have international service or you plan to get a local SIM card while you're there. If you try to get a local card, make sure that the phone that you're carrying is unlocked and is something that you could use an international card in. There are a lot of location sharing apps. Some people like to share, via Find My Location or things like that. But basically, ways where you can track your family members and connect with them while you get separated. Do consider downloading offline maps on your phone as well. We'll try to link it in the description on how to do that. But this is especially helpful when you have international service and you have minimal data that you can use. Sometimes you might not have the network. So having an offline map really helps navigating. So you want to be able to pin your location, your tent location in Mina, or your location in Arafah. Sometimes you're traveling back and forth. It could be easy to get lost. So having a map that you can refer to will help navigate and get back to your tents. Some people like to carry air tags as well. This again could be something you could give to a family member who doesn't have a phone of their own or something similar that helps track locations. Basically, you want to try and use technology to your benefit and stay connected with your family members. Some people like to keep the air tags in their luggage items as well while they are in Hajj, and the luggage that they have left in the hotels, just to keep track of where their luggage is at all times. Let's look at the medicine and snacks that you want to consider carrying. Make sure that you have prescriptions. Try to keep them separated in different bags, just in case one bag gets lost. You don't lose all of it. So you want to make sure that you have sufficient prescriptions for your travel. Carry some antibiotics if required. Again, this is something that could potentially be based on prescription availability. So discuss that with your doctor that you're traveling to this country, and they might be able to recommend some antibiotics potentially for that. You want to try and carry some over-the-counter medicine for pain, for fever, something like Tylenol, something like Motrin, that you want to make sure that you have. Try to carry some electrolyte powder as well. You lose a lot of salts through sweating. So you want to make sure that you are hydrated, you drink enough water. Try to have some electrolyte powder as well. You could get Gatorade water, again, depending on what your preferences are. Keep some antidiarrheal medicine as well. A lot of things are changing. There's a lot of different food that you got exposed to that your body might not be used to. So it's good to carry some. And same thing with anti-allergic. Sometimes you don't necessarily know that you're allergic to some things. When you get there, you're a different city, different country, you want to try and have some allergy medicine just in case you find out that you're allergic to something there. Do try to carry a small first aid kit, some basic things like bandages and band-aids and things like that in that. Vaseline, you want to try and have something that you can use, again, depending on, like I said, not all things will necessarily be ihram friendly. So make sure that you're using products that don't have fragrance when you are in ihram. But because of the lot of weather and walking, you could potentially need Vaseline and other similar moisturizing products to try to especially moisturize the inner thighs and other body parts as needed. Or carry a sports wrap for any potential injuries that you might face. Again, these are just some things to consider carrying. Not all of these are necessary, but again, depending on what you think most likely you would need, you can make your own judgment call. Try to carry some energy bars and some snacks and candies. You want to have some food that you could go back to. Sometimes you do have some good food that gets it's provided with a lot of stores where you can buy international food products as well. But again, something to be aware of, especially if you are traveling, you're walking, you need to have access to some snacks so that you can eat as needed. Next is personal care items. Carry an electric trimmer. It can be hard sometimes to get in touch with a barber, especially when you are in Mina and you need to get out of ihram before that, trying to trim your hair or shave your hair. It might be harder to get, or there might be big queues for barbers. When you are doing Umrah and you're close to the ihram, actually there are a lot of barber shops that are right across outside, so you could go there as well. But having your own trimmer does help, and then that could potentially be used as needed. Alternately, you can carry a razor as well. But again, you probably need a trimmer to first cut off the larger portions, and then you can shave it off if you want to really shave your head. Do carry miswak. You want to try and bring in the sunnah. You're doing Hajj. This is ibadah. So you want to try and use miswaks as you need it. It is really recommended. It is also, would help you stay away from any doubts about products that are usually marketed as fragrance-free, but might not actually be. Again, you want to carry a toothbrush if that's something you want. Fragrance-free products can be doubtful. So if you have to be really sure about things like toothpaste, wipes, soap, deodorant. If you can avoid it, it is good. In Hajj, there are a lot of things that talk about Haji and disheveled hair, and in that situation, there is a specific reason, right, why we are not allowed to use perfumes. But again, take your judgment call, discuss with your scholars of what is appropriate, and pack accordingly. Some miscellaneous items to think about. Consider having a spray bottle. This is good for emergency wudu. A travel adapter, the electrical outlets are different in Saudi Arabia. So you want to look up what are the types of outlets. We'll try to link some as well. There are some universal outlets that travel adapters that you can buy that could basically be used in any country. There are certain specific types of outlets that are usually in Saudi Arabia. So you could either buy adapters for those, or you could buy a universal one as well. Try to carry a good power bank. You will have extended periods of time when you might not have access to charging points. So you want to be able to charge your phones as needed, especially that to help yourself travel. But be careful. Try not to use your cell phones for unnecessary things, for things that are not related to Hajj. During the time, you want to try and avoid being situations like this. We've seen, unfortunately, sometimes Hajis trying to spend time by doing different actions that might not be necessarily appropriate for Hajj. So do sure to carry some books that you might want to read that would help increase your knowledge, help increase your taqwa, and make sure that you have some activities planned that you would do in Mina. There are certain times of the day where you might not necessarily have uh, an action to do, right? You might be done with the deeds for the day. So you want to have some books that you would plan to read, or some Islamic lectures that you might want to listen to, and not waste time on social media. Let us know if there's something that we missed, and is there something else that you recommend. We'll try to, like we said earlier, we'll try to link in the description a printable checklist that you could then customize for yourself and use appropriately. Also, we'll try to link some products that might be helpful. Jazakallah khair. Please remember us in your duas. Assalamu alaikum.